Hello, Bambaji here with another Sun Gate transit. We are moving into gate 14. You can see it here on the slide. Gate 14 is in the sacral center. That is that red square towards the bottom of the body graph. And the polarity, its opposite in the wheel, is gate 8. This is what is grounding the light of the sun. And gate 8 is the brown square. That is the grounding there in the throat center. So gate 14 is called power skills in terms of human design language. And in the I Ching, sorry, the traditional I Ching, it is called possession in great measure, which is a great name. Great name. So we have the 14 is pointing upwards to gate 2. This is what we call the harmonic. Gate 2 is at the other end of the channel, and gate 2 is in the G center, and it is the driver. It is the seat of the magnetic monopole. So this is a really powerful channel. You can imagine between the 14 and the 2. So the wagon, the possession in great measure. This is, we have the image of the wagon for gate 14, and it's a really sort of archetypal material gate as far as the traditional I Ching is concerned, because it's the wagon that can be loaded up with goods, material goods representing great wealth. What is actually being possessed in this 14th gate is the extraordinary power of the sacral center. And as much as it is the gate of power skills, it is also a gate in which the ability to use energy correctly is its most important attribute. Gate 14 is part of the column that runs up through the middle of the body graph. It's the individual, mutative, directive column. And it is the 14th gate, which is this great power that has a unique capacity of being able to give us our direction in life by being the generative source of the energy, the fuel for the second gate. So the second gate is the gate of the driver. It's called the receptive. And as I said, it sits in the G center. The driver. Drivers just drive. It's in order for them to go anywhere or to move the vehicle, they need to be able to put their foot on the accelerator and get access to fuel. They need power with which to drive their vehicle. The second gate without the 14th gate is a bit like a child, sitting in the back seat of the car with one of those toy steering wheels, playing around, but they're not actually going anywhere. When it comes to the fuel, it's all about the 14th gate. And the direction that you go in is directly related to the quality of the fuel that you receive. Gate 2 is a gate in the incarnation cross of the Sphinx. This is the cross of direction. The 14th gate is the power that drives the Sphinx. Changes in human design are determined by mutation in the format energy, which comes from the channel 63. This is the 360, if you want, because the 63 is a gate, which sounds confusing, but the channel 360, which is between the root having the 60 and the sacral having the 3. This is the channel that actually leads directly up into the 14. And so it can have a mutative effect on the driver's fuel. And fuel determines direction. You will have probably heard the saying that you are what you eat. And there's an element of truth in that, and you can pick it apart in many ways and look at it. But within the context of fuel and direction, the way that Ra described it is that you can imagine that you've got a block of flats, and you have a vegetarian living in one flat, and you have a carnivore living in another flat. And right away, you can see that the direction they are each going to take in their life is going to be different. Not psychologically, it's not about a moral thing here, but it is physically. Life will take them in different directions to shop. It will take them in different directions to eat, to have, to go to a restaurant. Maybe they'll even shop for clothes in different places. So physically, they will place themselves in different locations. there will be a different direction to their life simply because of the quality of fuel that they're putting in their body and that their body is then producing as a result of that. In order for the 14th gate to run correctly and provide this great power for the mutative direction in this life, it has to be operating on the correct fuel. And that correct fuel can only be the byproduct of a person operating correctly as themselves. Which brings us back to strategy and authority, because of course it's the only thing we can rely on. And Ra was very clear when it came to food. You know, that it didn't matter so much what you put into your body, but it was the conditions around that. So it's following your PHS, it's following your determination. And that is what he said. He could eat roadkill as long as he ate it within the conditions set by his PHS. The channel, the 14-2, it's called the channel of the beat, and it's the keeper of the keys. And you'll notice actually when we go through the lines how often the word key is mentioned. When we look at the nature of the 14th gate and our direction in life, it goes back to one of the most fundamental things in human design, and that is understanding how to deal with the sacral center. If you have the 14th gate in a defined sacral center, your direction in this life is really simple. All you need to do is respond. It's simple. Maybe not easy, but it's simple. But through that response, you will be correct in whatever direction you take, and whatever fueling is part of your process. And the right fuel, which means operating correctly as yourself, that leads to the right skills in the way in which you maneuver through this world, through your direction. Now, if you have the 14th gate in an undefined sacral center, perhaps you can see the risk of being conditioned to fuel a direction that is not correct for you. It goes back again to you not being homogenized into the conditioning forces, but being able to operate as your differentiated self. Strategy and authority again. So the 14th gate is another individual gate. This is the third in a row we have for the sun's transits. And we know, I mentioned before, I think I got a little bit confused about it all, but that very often the polarities are also in individuality. So it is a very individual time that we're going through here at the beginning of this quarter of mutation. The 14th gate is a very fertile power. It's a sacred power. Ra said that you could substitute the word sacred or divine for the sacral center. The channel 14-2 is one of the tantric channels. All three of the channels between the sacral and the G center, they are all tantric channels. And tantra for most people is a word that is associated with sex. And this is very much a seven-centered concept. It's related to Kundalini energy, to the root center. But this is human design, and we are nine-centered beings. And for us, it is about the relationship between the sacral and the G center. It's the relationship that weaves power and identity together. It is where the sacral energy is available as fuel to empower the self. Although the ultimate expression of the self always lies through the throat. Generators are incredible beings. They make everything possible. This world couldn't exist without generators. They are an essential ingredient to the whole process. They hold the divine force of life. They are in constant response to life. Within this context, then, the tantric channels hold the fertile power of life, and it generates a specific direction. And although I gave the example of the vegetarian and the carnivore being taken in different directions physically, these channels are really about the way in which the identity is going to operate, because that's what they're empowering. The image that Ra gave us for the cross of the Sphinx, in terms of the placement of the gates in the G center, is that of the trident. It's the symbol of Neptune. That's what we imagine. We have gates 7 and 13 on either side. How do we do it this way? This could get messy. We got 7 and 13 coming up on either side of the G center, right? And then we've got the 1 coming out the top. And then down the bottom, we've got gate 2, opposite gate 1. So if you draw a line, that went quite well actually, it could have been a lot worse. If you take a line from gate 2 and you draw it right down into gate 14, you have that long handle of the trident. The Sphinx is the cross of direction, and gate 14, the gate of power, skills, possession in great measure. This is what empowers the whole directive process, bringing it up through the handle of that trident into the cross of the Sphinx. It empowers the driver in gate 2. It moves through the G center, and it gives us the 3 perspectives of life. It gives us the past through the abstract gate 13, the future through logical gate 7, and the individual existential now out of gate 1. So all of this to say, gate 14 is really an important gate for us. The headline to this hexagram reads, "The accumulation and retention of power through skilled interaction, coupling grace with control." The 14th gate is always accumulating power, and it accumulates power in its process in order to be able to empower others and empower their direction. And yet it's not here to give its power away. It's loading up its wagon for itself. There is a possessiveness here as well. In our time, we have really the association of energy with money. Very often the same word is used in both circumstances. When we talk about our resources, we're often referencing money in some form or another. The power that is inherent in the 14th gate is not about money, not in the sense of hard currency. It's about power as currency. And it's about having the skill to use that power wisely. If you're a generator with a hanging gate 14, and a hanging gate means that there's nothing at the other end, you've got the sacral, of course, is going to be defined because you're a generator and you've just got the 14 sticking up with no 2. Then in this case, you are dependent on other people to get that energy out. But imagine, you wouldn't walk down the street with a basket full of money and just let everybody grab whatever they could as you wandered past. So there is a skill to be learned in the use of power. And you'll notice as we go through the lines of gate 14 that every line has a lifetime learning or an introduction line. And this tells us that we don't come into the world with this knowledge. It's going to take a while to learn the skill of accumulating our power correctly, retaining it whilst coupling it with grace and control as we successfully interact with others. It will take time. This is individuality, so there is a potential for melancholy, the flavor of it being around work, around having to work. Because we live on a material third line planet, we have to work for everything. The individual is always at their best when they have a passion for things, when they love what they do. When the 14th gate works at what it loves, it produces a lot of energy and it doesn't mind working anymore. The work is not work so much. If you love what you do, then you will not be melancholic around your work. The message for individuals is very clearly, don't do what you don't love. And I guess because we all have at least one individual activation, at least I've never met anyone who hasn't got at least one individual activation. I guess that's the message for all of us. Don't do what you don't love. So the polarity and the grounding to gate 14 is gate 8. This is the gate of contribution, holding together, with the headline that says the basic worth realized in contributing individual efforts to collective goals. So more individuality here. Gate 8 is in the throat center. It's looking down at gate 1. So it's in that same power column as the 14th gate. It wants to contribute. It wants to express the possibilities of individuality. It says, I know I can contribute or not. It's a voice which is certain or uncertain. With both the 14 and the 8 being in the same circuit, we know that there is a support built in. They understand each other because they share that format energy, that pulse that comes and then doesn't. The ability to contribute the power of the 14 or not, to express the power of the 14, to bring mutation. All of this is part of what's going on here between the 8 and the 14. It's all a potential. And there is, of course, in the 8, the potential for melancholy as well, and the possibility to express melancholy through the throat, but without justifying it and without attaching to it. Have you experienced the melancholy that comes with individuality? Have you ever explored it? Have you sat with it to see where it leads without doing anything with it? It's one of those energies that, I mean, people will often want to try and jolly you out of it, or they'll want to know what's the matter, why are you feeling like this, or it's difficult to just sit with it sometimes and allow it to be. It's a little bit like the emotional wave. When you're down on the wave, people want to bring you up again, or they just don't want to be with you at all. So being with these energies and recognizing that it's just a chemistry and that it will pass, because everything does. It may be different lengths of time, but everything eventually passes. That can help as well to keep that knowledge. Yeah, interesting. It's really interesting. I have the ratchet wave. That's my emotional wave. And yeah, and it's a powerful force when it goes down. It's a powerful force. Oh, it's powerful when it's up as well. But there's something that comes with it. And maybe because of the individuality I hold, my personality sun is in 61, so that's an individual activation. And maybe there also that melancholy comes into my wave and gate 55 as well. When you look at your own chart and your activations through all of this work we're doing, although we're just looking at one gate at a time, and of course we are a holistic blend of all of these. So you look at your chart, I'm experiencing this. Does this bring it in? I wonder what effect this is having on it. Or you build up a picture of what you've got, and it's so rich. And oh, it's so beautiful when we look at charts. Oh, I love doing chart analysis. I just pulling out all the little bits and saying, have you seen this? Have you seen how this fits with this? And it's not just that you've got this, because you've got that as well. And it's like, whoa, it can be really good fun. It can also be very illuminating, and it can also be like, holy fuck, that's why that happened. Anyway, I digress. I'm going to go and prepare the first line of gate 14. I look forward to exploring this with you. Thank you for joining me. And yeah, I'll see you in a little while. Go gently.